Here we go, going live. Must be Wednesday. Holy cow. Hello everybody, Bob Loves the Pond Boss coming at you live. There's Jason Nepstad. Of course it is. Hi Jason. Coming at you live from Pond Boss World Headquarters, Gordonville, Texas. And coming off of a holiday weekend. Hope you guys had a great holidays. There's Danny Mac. Hey Danny Mac, good to see you, buddy. I spent Thanksgiving with son Jonathan down and his bride and their two little bitty grand peeps down at Washington on the Brazos. They have a place down there near Brenham. Hi Brad, good to see you, buddy. Saw Chuck Brinkman and Tim Stewart checking in. So I'm going to do what I do here and kind of refresh this page and see if I can get this video up so I can see what all is going on. Tim is having fun. He's at a hibachi grill in New Jersey. I won't blame you. I kind of want to be doing that too, except I'm doing this. Whee! So, let me see here. Bear with me here. I don't have any idea what I'm going to talk about, so you guys need to jump in there with some questions so we can kind of steer this conversation. Here's Fred Bingaman. I talked to Fred today. We had a good conversation. We're going to, Debbie and I are going to pop in and see Fred and Connie in Brownstown, Illinois, and we're hoping we can match up with Nate Herman as well and get him on the show in a couple of weeks. But I'll tell you more about that as we get to it. Okay, oh, there it is. I see it. Here we are. Yay. I get to go here. How do you start a watch party? I'm not sure what that means. Okay, I'm going to start a watch party. Y'all tell me if y'all are invited. Uh-oh, I may have messed up. Oh dear, I need to turn off the sound. We don't need that. Oh, there it goes. Now it's gone. So, now I'm going to circle back here and see what you guys are saying so I can get to it. And you guys really, really need to hit me some questions. Keith Sutton. Hey Keith, good to see you. Catfish Sutton checking in all the way from Arkansas. Keith is a really well-known outdoor writer, published in lots and lots of different magazines and journals. And I tell you what, the guy's a stud. He really is. And I'm so glad that he's watching this show. Hey, Ed Brewer, where'd all my turtles go? Hey, you know what? When it gets cold, like it's been, their nature is to kind of go down to the bottom. And one of the things that turtles can do is they can actually absorb oxygen from the water enough that it can get into their circulation system or circulatory system where they can, and their metabolism rate slows way, way, way down, so they don't necessarily have to breathe. Grant Rogers, Todd Austin, do channel catfish have to have a cavity to raise in a small farm pond? Absolutely they do. If channel catfish don't have a cavity to spawn in, they won't do that. And I'll tell you about channel catfish. They spawn last each year in warm water fish ponds. So channel catfish are going to be spawning typically in the end of May, 1st of June. There's Jose Latore. Good to see you, Jose. And let's see what I've done here. I need to get on here so I can see what y'all are saying to me, because I'm having to look at it on my phone. There we go. Now I can see it. There's Justin Shink, Chuck Brinkman, Brad Rom, John Funk. John Funk has probably got long handles on today. Mike DeMint from Tennessee. Good. Michael Gray checking in from Tennessee as well. Grant Rogers. Okay, do channel catfish have to have a cavity? Yes, they do. If they don't have a cavity, the female will absorb her eggs. Now, here's the catch to that. Channel catfish spawn last in most ponds, so you really don't want them to spawn, because you can, if they spawn last and you've got other species like bass and bluegill, odds are high that they're going to eat the fry anyway. So you're not going to get much survival rate out of channel catfish if they spawn. Now, if you have a catfish only pond, and they spawn in a cavity, then you're going to get lots and lots and lots of baby channel cat, because a 2-pound female channel catfish can lay 25 or 30,000 eggs. I mean, how many of those need to survive before you got too many catfish? You know, and the channel catfish are so inexpensive, they're like 35 cents a piece. And if you've got a 1-acre pond, you can buy 200 of them for $70. So you've got control over the numbers. So I tell people to not let them spawn. If you can discourage them from spawning, I think that's a better idea. Coming off of a little bit of a sinus infection. So my throat's still a little bit crusty. I'd like to know what Tim Stewart's eating. I had taco something. All right, so Jason Epstein said, any cost-effective solution to monitor water temperatures throughout the year? Would like to monitor for threadfin shad purposes. You know what? There actually is. There's a, golly, let me think about it a minute. You're going to have to do a little research, which you're real good at, Jason. There is a device that I think is manufactured by Hach, H-A-C-H, maybe? There's a company out there that manufactures a little capsule that you can suspend at whatever depth you choose. And I've used them in the past where I've wanted to monitor water temperatures, and it will collect the temperature, and you can set it at whatever, it's battery powered. And it will collect the temperature and log the data. And then you go in after a month and pull it up, and then plug it into your computer and download the data, and you can have a trend line that shows you what the temperatures have been. And you can do that at pretty much any level of the pond. That's a good idea, actually. So yeah, and it doesn't cost much. I think we paid $80. Danny Mac struck out fishing. The wife is making popcorn to watch. You got to have popcorn to watch this, I promise. You really do. So Jason, I can't remember the name of that device, but it's shaped kind of like an egg. And you can dangle it down in the water. You got to pull it up and take it in, dry it off, and connect it to your computer. And it will tell you the temperature. And I think there's actually one that also, it collects several items of data, but temperature was the main one I was interested in. So we answered where all the turtles go. Channel catfish. John Funk says, here in the north, it looks like we're going to have up and down temperatures. Hey man, we're having that here. We had, holy cow, we had temperature in the low 20s. There was one day it didn't get above freezing in North Texas, that's fairly normal. Later, not right now. But today we had a low of 34 and the high was in the 60s. Tonight the low is going to be 50 and the high is going to be in the low 70s. So with those temperatures going up and down, the only thing to really keep your eye on where you are up north is ice safety. If you've got ice, you got to be safe. The downside to having ice early in winter is that extends the amount of time that you've got ice cover, which increases your risk of winter kill. So as long as your ice is clear and you keep some snow off of it, where the sunlight can penetrate through the ice, and I know that's a crapshoot for a lot of guys in the north, but if you can do that, if you can keep sunlight penetrating through the ice, then your pond will continue to produce oxygen. But under ice that's snow covered or cloudy, the biggest worry you're going to have is the risk of winter kill. Other than that, there's nothing else really to keep your eyes on. How do you begin aeration in an established pond approximately 1 acre and 9 to 11 feet deep, Mike Dower says. There's W.C. Thurman. Hey, Mr. Thurman, good to see you, buddy. That's from our good friends in South Dakota. He actually lives in Kansas, as I recall. The Willises, Dave Willis and his family. So, Mike, the proper way to begin aeration in an established pond, I'm going to tell you need to do that when the water temperatures are rising in the spring. So now is the time to shop for the right system for your application. And you can go to the Pond Boss Resource Guide to give you some information on companies that you should choose to talk to that can help you engineer a system. But the time to start using it is going to be, and of course this is a little bit dependent on where you live and where your pond is. I'd be a little hesitant to try to aerate a pond in the north once there's ice cover, unless we have a conversation. Whew, sorry. I do think that there are times in the north when it is smart to aerate a pond to minimize the risk of winter kill. However, if you're in the Midwest or south of the Mason-Dixon line, you don't really want to crank up an aeration system until the water temperatures are on the rise above 55 degrees, probably closer more to 60 to 65 degrees. And then there's ways to start up that system that you need to learn about depending on the system that you choose. Let's see, Danny Mac, the fiberboard 6 temperature probes for barbecue. It connects to Wi-Fi and has a data logging app in the cloud. The fiber board, 6 temperature per. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean for barbecue. John Krause, hey man, I'm not going to be too far from you here in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be up in Brownstown, Illinois, which is south of you a little bit. Steve Lewis checking in from Hot Springs, Arkansas. Chuck Brinkman, does the size of the pond have a direct effect on the growth potential of largemouth bass, even if they are feed trained? Trying to set some long-term goals, but be realistic. Absolutely it does. The size of the pond is going to have an impact or an effect on how big your fish can get based on how many are taking up how much space. So even if you've got X number of bass and they're gaining weight like crazy, there's going to be a percentage of those fish that separate themselves from the rest. Those fish have a legitimate chance. If you're feeding feed-trained native strains of largemouth bass, 8 pounds is going to probably be the tops, even in small waters. I mean, it's, you know, even though you think that you can really ramp it up and feed them in a confined space, if you're feeding that much fish food in a confined space with limited numbers of fish, then you're going to have water quality issues. So, you know, if you really want to grow some big bass in small waters, you have to aerate, and you're still going to have to do some selective culling. All right, Danny Mack still in there. He's talking about would give 6 temperatures vary as you would. Yep, okay, so there you go. That's the way to look. Hey, Charlotte Foster, good to see you, dear. Glad you joined in. Daniel Hendrick, good to see you. Philip Benefield, is it possible to fish down an overpopulated pond? Absolutely, it is. Should I put back the bass that don't seem to be stunted but are skinny? Yes. You know what? We've got Pond Boss magazine. We've got quite a bit of information to help you figure that out. So where you're going there is if you will weigh and measure some fish that you catch, those catch rates and the lengths and weights of those fish you catch are going to tell you when you've culled enough fish. So if you've got an overpopulated, I'm presuming you're talking about a bass pond, if you can catch 20 to 30 pounds of bass per year, 20 to 30 pounds of bass per year of the specific sizes that are overcrowded, then yes, you can make a difference. Now, if you've got a 30-acre pond, you do the math on that, that's 900 pounds of bass per year. If they're half a pound apiece, that's 1,800 fish. So it's all relative. It just depends on how big the pond is. One thing to remember when you're fishing for those fish and you're culling them, you want to save the best of the best. So if they look like what Ray Scott says, an Alabama deputy sheriff, throw them back. If they look like a long distance runner in a marathon, take them out because they're not going to make it very well. So the answer to your question is yes, you can fish down an overpopulated pond, keeping in mind that the young of the year fish are going to come fill in those slots. So even though we think that we can fish a pond down, get the numbers of bass down, there's always some young fish that are trying to come back up and fill that slot. So keep that in mind because it's a never-ending battle, but it's a selective battle. Mike Dower, I have the aeration system installed. I'm just reluctant. The pond is already iced over in New York State. I have 2 12-inch diffusers at the deepest point, 11 feet, hooked up to a 1 horsepower compressor that is programmable to turn on and off, afraid to destratify. Well, Mike, don't do that now because what happens is, here's some physics of water I've talked about in the past. Water at its densest is 39 degrees. If you take a gallon of water in a milk jug at 39 degrees and you weigh it, that's the heaviest the water is going to be. As it warms up, it expands. As it cools off, it expands. So where you are now in upstate New York with a layer of ice, that layer of ice is actually protecting the temperatures of the water beneath it. So in the deepest part of your pond, your water is probably 39 or 40, even 41 degrees. Now, the only reason for you to kick on your aeration system is if you're convinced that you've got so many plants that you're going to run the risk of winter kill. So if you really want to figure it out, drill some holes, check your oxygen levels. I don't know where you are. You might be able to talk to Mark Cornwell up at SUNY Cobleskill, and he can help you with that. Not sure where you are in upstate New York. and you can measure the oxygen levels. And if your oxygen does begin to drop down below, if it gets down around 3 parts per million, then I'd sure look at the advantages of using the aeration system to keep from having a winter kill. But just to turn it on, to move the water now, to destratify it now, doesn't make sense. I would not do it. Danny Mack says, we're still talking about the temperature gauge. Hang the probes in the water if you can get a long enough lead. Yep, that's right. Chuck Brinkman, I'm sure not going to complain about a couple of 8-pounders. You can grow some 8-pound bass in your pond on feed. There we go. Joey Chancellor from Whitesboro. Hey, Joe. Mark Dyer's checking in. Mike Cottrell made it. Philip Benefield, 5-acre pond and lots of 10 inches. $1 skinny now. I'm figuring 150 per year. That's a good start. Philip, what you'll see as you start culling bass out of a 5-acre lake, you're going to see the where, let's say you catch 30 bass at one time. And all 30 of those are between 12 and 13 inches. Then you go out and you catch 30 more. Those are all between 12 and 13 inches. Then you go out and catch 30 more. Now they're going to range between 11 and 14 inches. At some point, you'll start to see the range of lengths change, and you'll start to see the weights change. That's how you know that you're beginning to cull enough. So I think 150 is what you probably want to start with, because a 10-inch bass weighs about 10 ounces. In your case, they probably weigh half a pound. So I think starting at 150 per year, that's a good start. Weigh and measure them as you go. Because what you'll see is as you weigh and measure these bass that you're catching now compared to those 10 inches next spring, compared to 10 inches the following fall, you're going to see them gain weight or not. If they're not, then you need to keep culling. If they're gaining weight, then what you're doing is working. Check it out. All right, throw me some questions. Let's see here. Let me go back down here and see what all. Make sure I haven't missed anybody. And Danny Mac is talking about the gadget that you can dangle in the water. I do think that's something that if you're. What's the most important things to be looking at? There's an article coming out in the next issue of Pond Boss that you really need to see. Hey, holy cow! I even promoted Pond Boss. What am I thinking? Here's a copy of the magazine, Pond Boss. $35 a year. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like. Share this to your timeline. You'll be eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. Sheesh, I've been gone for 2 weeks. I'm lost. I left all my stuff in my truck. And a Pond Boss mug. So there's Lydia Jacobs North. Hi, Lydia. Good to see you. So anyway, hey, $35 a year. It's worth it. I promise. There's an article coming up in the next issue that tells you the most important things to measure or to monitor with your water quality. And in my opinion, temperature is the most important thing. Everything that happens in the water happens based on the temperature of that water. So, plants grow in certain temperatures. Fish spawn in certain temperatures. Plankton blooms start in certain temperatures. Different species of fish react differently in different temperatures. So temperature is the most important. It was kind of pounded into my mind in college that oxygen is important. Oxygen is just as important as how often you check it. Because if you figure out the oxygen's too low and then you check it, can't do anything about it. You can't fix it. Ain't going to work. So, oxygen is important for fish to live and for plants to produce, for plants to consume. But if you're not monitoring it on a regular basis, it becomes irrelevant to you because you can't do anything about it. If your water oxygen plummets to lower lethal and you don't know it's coming, what are you going to do other than watch your fish learn how to do the backstroke? So Jason Epstead, at what depth would you suggest the probes be to get an accurate temperature to see if the shad died off? Jason, I'm going to tell you to go down about halfway. So if your water is 25 feet deep, go down to 12 or 13 feet and check it there. And I also think that once the lake turns over, if you can check that water temperature down and close to the bottom, I'd want to know that as well. So, but if you're just going to check it in one spot, go halfway down. And the reason I say that is the temperature halfway down in a pond is typically the most stable temperature in that pond. The top 6 or 8 inches can change 10 degrees in one day, even on a lake as big as yours, Jason. Mike Dower, after winter thaw and the temperatures start to warm up, how would you begin your aeration? Well, knowing that you're in upstate New York, Mike, what I would do is I would kick my aeration. I don't know what kind of system you got. I'm going to assume that it's a bottom diffuser since you've got it set in on the bottom in 11 feet. I would kick it on for 15 minutes the first day, and I would do that when the water temperature is 58 to 62 degrees. Kick it on 15 minutes the first day, turn it off. The next day, kick it on for 30. Double that every day until you're going 24/7. Now, you guys in the South, we'll talk about this later, but you're monitoring your water temperature because aeration systems in the South, when the temperature gets hot, you make your water get so hot that it's stressful on your fish. Now, of course, Mike, in upstate New York, it's also going to be a little contingent on what fish you're raising and where you are in upstate. You know, if you're in the Catskills, that's one thing. If you're in the Adirondacks, that's another. If you're in the Finger Lakes, that's totally different. You know, and if you're trying to keep trout alive, then you're going to need a little different strategy. You don't want to aerate the bottom half of the pond if you're going to try to keep trout alive through the summer. You're going to aerate halfway up, you know, which is a whole other topic, which let's cover that topic. You know, here's the thing about trout, and people are stocking a lot of trout right now in the Midwest and the South. I've seen trucks on the highway several times running trout through Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, even into Louisiana. It's not the temperatures that cause trout to die. Like rainbow trout, for example, 70 degrees is about their top temperature, but it's not the temperature. It's water's affinity for oxygen. The warmer the water gets, the less oxygen it can hold. Trout have to have a minimum of 7 parts per million oxygen or they can't breathe. So, the only reason I'm drinking a Coca-Cola is because it's sitting on my desk. So when you're after winter thaw and the temperatures rise 58, 62, that's a good time. But also monitor your temperature as you go. Jason Nepstad, we planted a good bit of eelgrass this summer. Everything that was not inside of cages is gone. I believe that. I figured my favorite fish, carp or turtles, ate it. I'm trying to figure out what species I need to wage war on to improve the chances of our grass spreading outside of the fenced areas. Well, you know, I don't know how you're going to wage war on carp in a 125-acre lake. I think what you need to do is increase your exclusion fences, because once you can establish those plants and they can begin to spread, then you're going to reduce the odds of plant eaters, which includes carp and turtles. You're going to decrease the odds of them wiping them out. So I would look at building some more exclusion fences, even where you don't have eelgrass. Because if you can even get some, because in every single lake that's been in existence longer than a year, there's a seed bank. Listen to me. There is a seed bank deposited either by fish or waterfowl or by plants that have grown there in the past. And if the conditions are right for those plants to grow, they will. The problem when you have a lake that doesn't have a lot of plants in it is when something starts and those animals that want to pick it and eat it, it's like if you go to the grocery store and there's not a lot of stuff on the shelves. You got to fill the shelves up. So what that means is if you can keep some fish off of some areas to allow some plants to grow, even if you didn't plant any plants, from the seed bank, then you can divert them away. Carp, you can feed them and shoot them. I didn't really say that, did I? Of course, in a 125-acre lake, man, I don't know. I don't know how effective you can be. You know, the main thing for your lake is for your bluegills to gain a foothold and for your bass to gain a foothold. And even in that lake, for crappie to gain a foothold. If they can get in there and get ahead of the carp, then that's going to be your best advantage for aquatic plants to grow. Bill Russell's checking in. Hi, Bill. Good to see you, buddy. Chad Gillespie's got it. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Let's see, what other topics do we have tonight? We're already 25 minutes in. That little sinus deal is messing with me, boys and girls. Been on a dadgum antibiotic now for a week, 10 days, I guess. So, here we go. Let me think of other topics that we talk about. You know, when the water temperature is going up and down, one of the questions I get commonly, I had a call from a guy in Missouri today, South Central Missouri near St. James, and his question was, you know, we've had this cold weather, should we keep feeding the fish? My question was, are they eating your fish food? He said, some days they do, some days they don't. Well, my response to that is feed them. Because even when the water temperature is kind of in that range to where they don't really want to feed, that doesn't mean they're not feeding. It just means you're not seeing them eat. You know, especially if you're feeding Aquamax MVP. Because what happens is when the feeder goes off or you pitch the feed out there, if they're not coming up to eat it, that means they're sluggish. So they're right on the cusp of that temperature being low enough that they're not so active. But that doesn't mean that they won't come up and peck at it as it's falling through the water column. Because they will, especially bluegills. They're real good about that. And if they're actively feeding, feed them the fish food. He told me that his water temperature got down into the 40s, then it shot back up into the 60s, and when that happened, the fish started to feed again. In that case, feed the fish. Because the more nutrition they get going into the winter, the better they can survive the winter, the more fat they've got stored up, the more energy they've got stored up. And if you can do that, then big advantage. Nathan Stewart checking in from New Jersey. I wonder if you're any kin to that other Stewart that's been hanging out here from Florida and New Jersey. Philip Benefield, are cows detrimental to the health of a farm pond? They've broken down the banks in some areas already. I'm going to answer that two ways. The first answer is yes. They're detrimental to the health of a farm pond for two main reasons. One is they deposit hot waste. So anytime a cow, you know, the south end of a northbound cow makes a deposit in the field, leaves a cow patty, those nutrients are hot. They're not composted. They hit the water, they're going to cause blue-green algae or something like that that we don't want. They're going to compromise, and this, of course, this depends on how many cattle too. They're going to compromise the health of the water quality. The second thing that cattle do with a farm pond is they wade in it, they'll walk along the bank, and they create avenues for erosion. You know, so now if that farm pond is designed to be a stock pond for cattle to drink, that's one thing. But if it's a farm pond that you want to use for fish, then I would tell people, what I tell people is to fence them off. Now, if the cattle need a drink, you can either provide them a gravity flow trough with a float on it below the dam, or fence off an area of the pond that they can come walk into and get a drink. But yes, they are detrimental to the health of a farm pond, and some of that is contingent on flow rates. If you have 10 cows in a 5-acre pasture and not much flow rate, they're going to cause that pond water quality to deteriorate pretty fast. All right, Philip Benefield, thank you. You're welcome. Janet Catrone, you're welcome. Oh, hashtag, well, good to see her. Stan Lee, hey Stan, good to see you, buddy. He's one of our good buddies, a veteran that lives in Sherman, Texas. Good friend of ours. Good to see Stan checking in. So now, I just got a private message from a cardiologist that I know over in Sherman. Hello, Bob. I have a 1.7 acre stock tank that is spring fed, has never gone dry. Is it large enough to support crappie? I want to have a lake that's primarily crappie. Let me tell you guys about crappie. No. Anytime somebody says, I want crappie, they're not telling me they want a sport fish that's fun to catch. They're not telling me they want a fish to help balance the fishery. Every single time they want crappie because they like to eat those fish. Now, the thing about a 1.7 acre pond is just not big enough to grow enough of the right size bait fish to support crappie. You know, a 13 or 14 inch crappie is going to have a mouth that's about that big. So it can eat lots and lots and lots of 1 to 3 inch bluegills. Remember, it takes 10 pounds of bait fish for a game fish to gain 1 pound. Well, crappie are going to be eating continuously to grow. And if we've got bluegill that are spawning in Texas 4 or 5 times a year, they literally cannot keep up with. They literally cannot keep up with the crappie. And there he is. Okay, so now our cardiologist buddy just popped in and said, hey, man, I love your show. Glad to see you, man. That's good. So I just answered your question. I will type a response later, Dr. Marshall. But here's the deal. You don't really want crappie in water smaller than about 20 acres. And it's because they're unpredictable spawners. You don't know if they're going to spawn, when they're going to spawn. And when they do spawn, they spawn first in warm water ponds. So baby crappie are coming off the nest, feeding on the next fish in line to spawn, which are usually bluegills or red ear or largemouth bass. So they disrupt the food chain. And the numbers, and when they do spawn successfully, they have big numbers of babies. And I have literally seen 2-acre ponds with 7-year-old crappie that were that long, maybe 4 inches long, little thicker than a postage stamp. So in small waters, it's not a matter of if they overpopulate, it's a matter of when. Now here's the caveat. A lot of guys will say, well, you know what, we can put hybrid stripers in there and manage the reproduction. Yeah, you can do that. You can add some red ear in there to add enough to diversify the food chain. Yep, you can do that. You can have crowded largemouth bass to help eat the over reproduction of crappie. Yep, you can do that. And then in a 1.7 acre pond, you end up with about 35 crappie that are 14 inches long. You know, and then when you catch those and you're not cycling them in like largemouth bass do, it's just not a good balancing act. It's hard to do that. Michelle Kaufman checking in. I've seen Michelle on Facebook. She's a real avid angler from upstate New York that loves to catch bass and bluegills and smallmouth and things like that. Michelle, good to see you. So that's what I got to say about that. You know, I've tried to work with crappie in small ponds, and just when I start seeing some success, then I figure out in a 1.7 acre pond that I end up with about 10 pounds of fillets when we harvest them, and then we still get hundreds of little bitty fish like that aren't growing. And if they don't have enough to eat for 6 or 8 months, you see their growth potential diminish. So at the other end of their lives, they only hit 10 inches. So here's the issue with crappie in small waters. Irregular spawning habits. They compete too far down the food chain, where a 14-inch largemouth bass can eat a 6-inch largemouth bass. A 14-inch crappie can eat a 4-inch largemouth bass. So they don't compete fairly in the food chain. They disrupt the food chain with the little bitty fish. And the inconsistent spawning leads to overproduction. And that may only happen 1 every 4 years. But when that happens, then that completely upsets the balance of the whole pond. And by the time most of us figure it out, we're 2 years behind. That's the biggest problem with those things. So there you go. Let me circle back down here. We got 30 guys watching, 30 folks watching, 29. I need to think of a good topic. Give me a question. Somebody pitch a question up there. Tim Stewart came back. I guess let me look through this magazine and see if I can find a topic. Oh, you know what? We are going to redo the way the magazine looks, make it flow better. We're going to increase the content. I'm going to do away with managing the mini pond, but we're going to start. I've got several articles coming up from DIY guys. One of them is going to be Brian High Flyer on Brian Hoffman on the Palm Boss Forum, and he's a FedEx pilot, and that guy pays attention to detail. If he didn't, he'd die. You know, there's Diane Drake checking in from South Dakota. Good to see you. But anyway, he's going to write a series of articles on solar powering things around your pond, whether it's lights or aeration, stuff like that. George Spann, where do crappie move to this time of year in Texas? Normally I find them in 16 feet of water on brush. That's where they're going to be. They're going to be in the deepest water that they can get. Let's see here. They're going to be in the deepest water they can get in brush. I was spending some time with one of my clients the other day. He's just bought one of these fancy Garmin depth finders where you can actually watch the fish bite your hook. And he showed me some pictures where his, let's see here, y'all bear with me, I'm doing 2, 3 things at once. Where he could see crappie bunched up, laying on the bottom in 16 feet of water, 18 feet of water, in brush. And I mean, they weren't around the brush, they were in it. So this time of year, that's what they're gonna be doing. They're gonna be hanging out deep. Okay, now I know Dr. Marshall just sent me a message, and I'm not seeing it. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it. Anyway, hit me with something, boys and girls. George Span, why? Okay. Bill Russell, my favorite thing about cooling water is the improved visibility. Okay, you know why that happens? Why does water visibility increase? Oh gosh, I can hear 4 or 5 guys saying, I know. Well, it's because the things that are living in water, plankton, microscopic insects, zooplankton, as they die off, when the water temperature drops, they sink. They settle to the bottom, and when that happens, the water gets clear. Because a lot of the water clarity comes from, water turbidity comes from 2 things. Suspended clay particles or something living, which is either algae or animal plankton. So what happens is as the water cools off, it often gets more dense. When it gets more dense, it's heavier. But then as it starts to cool from 39, it spreads out, and it gets lighter than some of those suspended solids to allow them to settle out. And plankton dies, and the little bitty microscopic bugs die. And when they die, they fall to the bottom. Matt Reardon, when stocking a new pond with fatheads, bluegill, and red ear fingerlings, is it okay to add some large adult bluegills from a different body of water to help them spawn sooner before I add the predators? Yes. Now here's what you're going to get. Dadgummit, Dr. Marshall, I just saw something scroll across my phone, but I didn't get to see it. Maybe you're texting me. I don't know. I'm not seeing it. So anyway, what happens is adult bluegills will eat baby fathead minnows. So if you're going to use some adult bluegills, I think I'd stock a few more fathead minnows because the bluegills are going to eat some of those. But the answer to your question is absolutely yes. There's Kelly Duffy. Hey, Kelly. He's our resident plant expert and water quality guru. So yes, you can make, if you add some adult bluegills from a different body of water, just be sure they're bluegill. And yes, they will spawn sooner than your fingerling bluegills. So there's my answer for that. All right, what else you guys got? Let me see what else I got. Oh, we are gonna have okay, thanks for the answer. One last question. My larger lake that's approximately 30 acres I've caught, golly. Oh, here we go. Now I see you. All right. Dr. Marshall, thanks for the answer. Okay, one last question. In my larger lake that's approximately 30 acres, I've caught a lot of large fish, but nothing over 11 pounds. Any thoughts on growing super large fish? These are Florida, Arkansas strain bass. Well, I'll tell you this, Dr. Marshall. It's a function of genetics and longevity and them not losing a meal. So a fish that can make it all the way to 11 pounds probably has the genetic propensity to get to be 12 or 13. But what may have happened, if it doesn't get any bigger than that, it lost its opportunity when it was crowded at 13 or 14 or 15 inches. So, one of the important things about culling bass, especially out of a 30-acre lake, is if you're not culling them and thinning them out when they get crowded, then you're going to reduce the odds of the top end size of your bass 6 years down the road. So that 11-pound bass probably has good enough genetics to get bigger than that, depends on its age. And if it's already at 12 or 13 years old, it's probably going to top out at 11 pounds. And that's not a function of what you put in there. That's a function of where it was at age year and a half to age 4. In that span of time, that's when most genetically superior bass lose their opportunity to grow to their maximum sizes because they just don't get enough to eat. All right, let's see. There's Dr. Wes Neal checking in from Mississippi State. Good to see you, Dr. Neal. Let's see. Listen, McCorder, what largemouth should I stock my 2-acre Alabama pond with? Female tigers or tiger Floridas 50-50? Able to manage it. Mrs. Ray Scott says hello. You tell Susan Scott that I love her and I miss her. I'd love to hang out with them, see him again, and tell her to give Ray a big old hug for the pond boss. What I would do for a 2-acre pond is I think I would talk to American Sport Fish Hatchery, talk to Sean over there, McNulty, and I think I would stock 50-50 tigers and Floridas skewed toward more females. Don't do females only. I don't think that works like people think it should, but I would do it that way. Matt Reardon, is small gravel fine to use for spawning beds instead of pea gravel? Much cheaper on the budget. Well, here's the catch about small gravel. As long as it's not crushed rock that has sharp edges, that's fine. The reason we like pea gravel is because it's rounded. When you've got crushed rock gravel that's abrasive, when fish start, especially bluegills, start making their beds, I've seen them literally cut themselves. And when they cut themselves, it's kind of hard to spawn and heal at the same time. Let's see here. Chris Rigoni, does filamentous algae have any benefit in a pond? Not really. I tell you, it does have one benefit. My spring water seems to be perfect chemistry to grow it the minute the sun hits it. It hasn't taken over the pond at all, but it's very prevalent. The only redeeming factor that I think filamentous algae has is it can take up space and compete with other plants that we would consider invasive, like Eurasian watermilfoil, even coontail, even bushy pondweed sometimes. If filamentous algae is growing there in the spring and is not bothering you, it's out-competing some other plants for that space. So even if it lasts a month that you're not fishing, that's going to push back by a month the invasive plants that otherwise would grow there. So that's the biggest redeeming factor that I can think of about filamentous algae. Jay Spires, good to see you, buddy. Yep, I feel fine. I felt fine last Wednesday. I just couldn't talk. And you can kind of hear my throat getting kind of scratchy now. Nathan Barber, at what temperatures should we turn off our aerators and feeders? I think the aerators, let's see, Southern Indiana, you need to turn your aeration system off now. If you've had it on all year long, it's done what it can to cleanse your water to prepare you for winter. So once the water temperature hits about 55, aeration really isn't serving much benefit. If you, let's see here, one is in shallow water, 3 to 5 feet, and here's what I'm going to tell you, Nathan. The one that's in deeper water, turn it off now. If you want to leave the one on in shallow water to keep a hole in the ice, that's fine. Otherwise, I'd turn it off. And of course, with an early winter like we've had in part of the nation, with early ice, at the tail end of the ice season, you might be more apt to a winter kill. That's one thing you can use your aeration system for, is to minimize your risk of a winter kill. I don't like aerating deep water because it cools the water off too much. That's what I don't like about it. Let's see, replying to Mike, Kelly Duffy. Okay, I must have missed something here. Let's see, Mike, what did I miss? I missed something. Oh, okay, I missed Mike Cottrell. Oh, wait, Mike Dement. Is water lettuce an annual? Oh, boy, I did miss some stuff here. Good, here we go. Is water lettuce an annual? Well, there we go. Go ahead and take a look at what Kelly Duffy did. And I see Kim Partain. Good to see you, Kim. What happens with water lettuce is it usually just dies back, but then comes right back because it is a perennial. All right, let me see here. I'm going to back up here. Mike Cottrell, what to expect from lack of rain and pond drawing down, still feeding, but not seeing much feeding. It's been down a while. Should I add bluegill after a good rain if we get it? You know what? There's really no benefit to stocking fish right now. I would wait until the spring. Wait till March. In March, then stock some more fish if you need more fish. it's just, I can't think of a single benefit of putting fish in a pond right now, because we're at the time that they're getting ready to go basically dormant. They're not going to feed. They're going to be subject to predation. You're putting them into a new environment from where they were raised. And those are all factors that are not easy on fish. So I think I'd wait. Okay, let me see what else we got here. Kelly Duffy, thanks for posting that thread. All right. Heck, I need a topic. As you can tell, I didn't prepare real well today. Been writing reports all day long. I did. There was one thing I wanted to talk about. Let's see, going back to Nathan Barber's question, what time should you turn off the feeders? I would let the feeders run empty, and then if you want to put up the if you want to pull the battery and put them in the freezer, that's fine. Or just let them run. Of course, every machine breaks at some point, so I'd be tempted to pull the battery and go. If you expect that you've got a Texas Hunter feeder, which, by the way, thanks to Texas Hunter for helping sponsor this program. We love Texas Hunter. Matt Reardon, have Eurasian watermilfoil bad in a 4-acre pond and started managing for a friend. Any tips on slowing it down next year? Chemicals help, but it always comes back. Eurasian watermilfoil reproduces 3 ways. It reproduces by fragmentation, reproduces with the root system, and it has seeds. So there's a triple whammy coming at you from those. The guy that called me from Missouri today has a lake in central Missouri that was about 60% covered with milfoil. His choice was to go ahead and eradicate all of it with herbicides and get rid of it, and then see what grows back in its place next year. Now, what he did was he gave up a whole bunch of habitat, released a bunch of bait fish into the water that caused his stunted bass to grow a little bit. So some plants is better than no plants, but in the sense of we're talking about Eurasian watermilfoil, it's a highly invasive plant. 4 acres, I think I'd take it out and I'd use herbicides. Now, if it starts coming back in the spring, one of the ways to slow it down, I'll tell you something that works real well for Eurasian watermilfoil is it's got to have sunlight. If you can block the sunlight off with fertility, then you can get ahead of it and you can stay ahead of it. And that doesn't mean it won't grow in the shallowest water, and if a lot of this pond is 2 feet deep, it's going to grow. But I have actually taken ponds in the past where the water drops off fairly quickly, get them fertile in the spring, and the dead, decaying milfoil helps to fertilize the water, to helps perpetuate the bloom, and that helps keep the sun off the milfoil, and it doesn't grow so bad. So even if you cut it back by half, then you're going to save half the cost of treating with herbicides. Hey, there's Billy Roberts checking in. He's one of our neighbors up here, one of the premier anglers in our part of the country, and just an all-around good guy. Good to see you, Billy. Glad to see you checking in. So here we go, 718. One thing I was going to talk to you guys about, I remember an insurance agent a long time ago sitting across from me at the office, and he said, Bob, he says, most people spend more time planning a vacation than they spend time planning the rest of their lives. So I want to talk to you about life insurance. Well, that really struck a nerve with me, and so I heard what he said. And that's when I started looking at a retirement plan and being able to be sure I had the right kind of insurance coverage. But the point I want to make is right now is the time that you need to be planning for what you're going to do with your pond next spring. And these questions you guys are asking, those are all in line with the plans that you need to be making for next spring. You don't need to do anything about Eurasian watermilfoil right now. You're not going to help yourself. It's at the point it's going dormant. You can't kill it. So make a plan for next spring. Now what folks do, and Kelly's on there, he'll be the very first one. Eurasian watermilfoil is one of the few problematic aquatic species that may be selectively controlled and managed. So he's talking about this with low rates of fluoridone or sonar. So Kelly's talking about that. But right now is the time to be planning for that. Because and Kelly be the first one to tell you, Kelly's got a device he invented that looks like a big drag hook that you can throw out on the end of a rope, and be dragging through the bottom of your pond, even if you can't see the bottom next March or April, late March, early April, that's the time you really need to be seeing if you've got any aquatic plants growing that you don't like. You don't want to wait until they manifest themselves within a foot of the surface. By then it's too late. Because if you're going to do something about it, it costs a whole lot less money and a lot less headaches if you can get them early in the year. So I think you need to be thinking about plans. You know, Mike, you were talking about water levels dropped. If the water level stays down over the winter and you got shallow ground, man, that'd be a good time to bring in a track hoe or a backhoe or put the box blade on your tractor and drag out some of that shallow water to get some depth for when it rains and fills it back up. So planning on stocking fish, you don't need to stock very many fish right now. If you guys want to stock rainbow trout, now's the time. If you want to add bluegills or bass or channel cat or whatever, wait. Do that in March. You know, do it early in spring, depending on when spring hits your part of the planet. So planning is a big, big thing to be thinking about right now. I mean, we're in the holidays. You're not going to be doing a lot around the pond. But I would sure be making a plan for what you want to do and put a timeline down. The most important, you know, when you talk to a realtor, they say the 3 most important things about real estate are location, location, location. The 3 most important things about what you do with your pond is timing, timing, timing. And that timing is going to be centered around temperature, temperature, temperature. So monitor your temperature and start making a plan. Well, my throat's about to give up. It's 7:21. All I got is a Coke, which I didn't bring any water. I'm a little bit scattered after this afternoon. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I want to tell you this. Thank you for watching. $35 a year for a subscription to Pond Boss. You'll spend $40 going out on a Friday night date, and that's gone the next day. This lasts a year. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like. Share this video on your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss mug. So I do appreciate you guys checking in and watching this show. It kind of helps keep me energized, keep me going. And next Wednesday, I'll be coming at you live again from here. The following Wednesday could be pretty fun. We're trying to get a show lined up over in Illinois once I get to Brownstown. And once I get that figured out, if Nate Herman can come, which I think he can, then we will dig into it. So, let's see here. Lance Houston just came on. Bob, we're having a debate. Our lake is 14 years old. No catfish, but we're out naturally. We're out in naturally, but we're no catfish. Huh. But I'm sure if you snuck in 34 acres, are there a lot or not? No, probably not very many catfish, if that's the question. Okay, Jerry McLean. Sorry, I'm going to soon tune out, turn off, get gone. Glad to see you checking in, and appreciate you guys watching. So see you next Wednesday live from right here, Pond Boss World Headquarters. Until then, adios.